All right, well, welcome to Porsche Night, everybody. And we're going to have some fun out here. You're probably wondering what's in the background. We'll tell you a little bit about that a little bit later. But my name's Brian Cheney, and we're out here every third Monday of the month for Porsche Night, and actually Mercedes Night, too. We actually have some Mercedes-Benz that come out here every now and again. But we have a special guest tonight, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. And we're going to sort of kick right off into that and welcome Tommy Johnson to the show. So, Tommy, you got the phone call, and you said yes.
Yeah.
And so that's what I like to talk about every time. It's like, when I contact people to come onto the show, they're not sure what to think at first. And when you said yes, I just really appreciate it. So, we're gonna kick off things and talk about where did all this Porsche stuff start for you. And I know there's a lot to go through. So maybe we just kick off into how did it start? What was your first Porsche connection in your life?
Well, the first thing that happened to me was I wandered out of high school class. I think it might have been somewhere 10th, 11th grade, and there was an old 356 parked in the parking lot, and I'd read about them and seen them in magazines, but I'd never really put my hand on one. And I walked up, I'm walking around the car, and the owner ultimately walked up as well, and one thing led to another, and I said, you got to take me around the block in this thing, which he did, and that was it. I was pretty well sucked into the deal after that, and it was a number of years later after I got out of college, I started to look for one. I found a couple older ones that were in 1,000 pieces, dragged it home, tried to put it together with next to no budget, and was able to do that on several occasions, and drove them and for a long time, and wound up going to college. Drove the car when I went to college. Wound up getting married. It was actually our first family car, 2 kids in the back. It was perfect. The seats are custom made for little kids. And then we just sold those off, a couple of those that I had, and then gradually moved up into the 912s, another 4-cylinder car. Drove those for a while, and then when there was enough money in the kitty, we bought an early 911, and just we can't stop.
Right, you're just sort of off to the races there.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind me asking, so where and when was that 356 ride that you got from around the block?
That happened on Edgewater Drive in front of Edgewater High School, College Park, Florida.
Wow, so right here in town.
Local.
Wow, so do you remember what year it was?
It was 1967.
67. So I've told this story on the show before, but it was about 90, I think, and my wife and I were living in South Florida. We weren't married at that time. And she was looking for a new car, and we found this 356 down in Miami. We went for a test drive in it. And long story short, it was one of the coolest drives I'd ever been on. And that was the one that got away. That was the car that at that time we wanted to buy, but we were just out of college. We had no wherewithal to buy a car for $10,000. So she ended up buying a brand new VW Golf at Gunther VW down in South Florida. So that was kind of our first 356 experience. But you hear these stories, at least I have, from people about 356s, and almost to a person, it's almost the same story. They talk about someone who used to drive by and they would see them, and somehow they ended up in the car and they ended up for a ride, and then next thing you know, they're just hooked. And there's just something about those little cars that's so special. The way they drive, the way they sound, the way they feel, and it really just hooks you in. So it started back then. You got into 912s, and so this was all just driving on the street and enjoying cars.
Yeah, pretty much. I did have a little bit of a go-kart experience. One day, I think I was 12 years old, minding my own business in the front yard, and this go-kart goes by at, to me, 200 miles an hour, right? And it sounded great, and I got on my bicycle, and I rode around, and I finally tracked down the house that where the go-kart lived. And there was back then an older gentleman. He must have been 25 years old, right? And at least old to me, and super nice guy. He was an engineer, and he was racing go-karts. And I would go down there in the evenings and on the weekend and gopher, just to help him clean parts and do this and do that. And he finally came to our house once and talked to my mother and said, your son's, he's hooked on this stuff, so if you don't mind, I'd like to take him to the next go-kart race. And back at that time in the mid-'60s, we did have in Central Florida a very new go-kart facility. It was first class, and I think it was the second Sundays of every month, second weekend, they would have the kart races. And well, one thing led to another, and I wound up buying a kart, and then I raced karts for about 10 years, and I was really too old to do it because I was college age, and you're not supposed to race go-karts when you're 20 years old, but I couldn't quit. And then it was time to not do anything but make a living and feed your kids, so and we were fortunate that we did have still had an old Porsche in the garage that we could take out and drive on the weekends. And I put together enough money to go to a skip barber school in 1978, and we had done some autocrossing in the old 911, which we all know what that is, and it's a lot of fun for not a whole lot of money.
See, we're live here, and this is what happens. This guy's on time every show.
That's
it. So you got involved in the go-karts. You said this was in 1978, right? That's about the time?
Driving school, the Skip Barber driving school happened in the late 70s. Karting was in 64 to about the early 70s. And then in 78, I went to my first driver's school, and boy, it was, then you're really sucked in. And I rented, MGs and Triumph Spitfires and anything that would pass tech, so you could run some SCCA races. And I ran SCCA races, got my regional license and then my national license, and kind of progressed up. Ran some of the earlier 911s for a while, and then got into Sports 2000, which is a single-seater car, and ran those for quite a while. And a friend of mine who was running in the same class as I was also had an early 911, and we decided, what we're going to do is we're going to sell each of our sport racer cars and our 911s, and we're going to buy a car that we can go race professionally. At least in our own minds, that's what we were going to do. And we went over to Tampa and wheeled and dealed and sold everything off and came back with a race car, a real race car. And we ran that car for several years in IMSA in a class back then which was called Camelite. Yeah. And it was a rotary, 13B rotary Mazda engine. Noisiest thing ever, but they would go forever as well.
So I remember those cars specifically because in the mid-'80s I was working in IMSA, and probably one of the coolest sounding race cars of all time was a rotary Mazda. I mean, they were just, and especially going around Daytona, you could just hear those cars screaming from miles away from the track even. Yeah. And I remember them really well. There was quite a few guys who ran them. So I know it was a pretty competitive time, right?
It was. And they were a great car to drive, and they were very durable. You did hear that engine in your head for days after you got out of the car, but they just didn't have enough power, and they weren't competitive with the V6 cars. And so then we moved up, and I bought a car in England, a prototype Camelite car, a C2 car in England, that had a 3-liter Cosworth engine in it, which didn't meet the rules here. And the engine du jour at that point in time was a V6 Chevrolet. So I ran the Chevrolet engines for a few years. I sold that car, and then I was able to put a deal together with a friend of mine that was looking to go pro racing. So I helped him buy a pro Mazda car, and we ran that car in IMSA for a number of years. And then we put a deal together with Mazda as a sub-support team, and we ran their compact cars in Continental Tire Challenge and Motorola Cup for a number of years. And then I had an opportunity through a friend of mine that was racing in the U.S. I was in the warehousing and logistics business my whole life, so we were used to shipping ocean freight to Europe and from Europe back to the States. So I started handling, the freight and all the logistics for a couple of race teams. And one year he said to me, you want to drive this prototype car? I'm not going to charge you anything because I couldn't afford it. And I said, well, I'm in, and as kind of a trade-off. And it was a great Ferrari-powered car, all carbon. I've never driven a car that quick. Scared me, but it was a great car. We had a lot of fun, and then I ran some Porsche Cup races with him in Europe, and that was a lot of fun. And then we came back, and I got into the vintage side, and I had a friend that had a 3-liter RSR, and we ran that in the vintage HSR series here, and we did the Classic Le Mans in 2004.
Wow, so the Classic Le Mans, for people who don't really understand what's going on there, so the 24-hour race has been going on over there for, I don't know what the anniversary is now for that race. Do you happen to remember?
60 some odd years.
Yeah, 60 some odd years. So that's the biggest endurance race in the world every year. And now they have this Classic Le Mans, and now they've even brought into the fray the Classic 24 at Daytona.
Yeah.
And so now, it gives an opportunity for guys who raced once upon a time with cars in the big races to now all come together and show their wares again. But it's a huge honor. Not anybody can just go do it.
No,
You got to have some wherewithal.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, this really is something special for all of those people involved, because now they're getting to run at the greatest track in the world at Le Mans. And so tell us a little bit about that. I know there was some other guys that were local that went over with you. Gary Stratton, who we've had on the show before, went over with you there. And so what year was that, and how did you guys end up finishing in that race?
It was 2004. We ran that event, and a gentleman here in town had the car, the 3-liter car, and so we ran it in a few test sessions and one HSR event, kind of get it squared away. And then a couple of the local guys that have been dealing with these cars forever went over with us, and then one other gentleman that had been driving for a long time out of Rhode Island, I believe. And so we all had some time in the car, and again, my connections with the people that I'd raced with in Germany who had a facility allowed us to use their shop to do more work on the car. We used all their transportation equipment and a lot of their equipment. And we went over and ran that event, and we didn't, knock on wood, we didn't have any problems. And we finished third in Group 6, which was the class in which we were running. So we had a lucky finish.
Wow. Yeah, but where luck is where preparation and opportunity meet, right? So you guys had put it all together.
Yeah.
So what an honor to be able to run a race like that. I know you also had some ties here to some other folks who we've had on the show. Nort Northam, who
yes,
I think Nort was maybe our first show, or first or second show. I know you guys have some history, but kind of the linkage there was that you guys really helped to get the Porsche Club started here in the Central Florida area.
Right.
I know he told us a little bit about that back then, but what I find interesting is to talk to people to get their version of how it all started. So why don't we hear a little bit about that from you? So how did the Citrus Region Porsche Club come to be here in Orlando?
Yeah, well, Nort's Mr. Central Florida Porsche guy for sure. I mean, he was the catalyst, I believe, in my mind, in putting that together. And we all were enthusiasts. We all had cars. We all hung around together and had our own little gathering and group of guys on our own. And then somebody came up with a bright idea. Well, why don't we make a club out of this thing? And I got dragged in. I wouldn't call myself a true pioneer, but there were 6 of us, I think, and Nort was the driving force for sure. And so it was going to potentially be based the Citrus region in Orlando, or possibly over on the East Coast and in the Cocoa Melbourne area. And we were able to kind of put our own chapter together over here. And little by little, we would always get fired up to go to the meetings and 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, and it's just grown over the years. So, and you know, the cars make the magnitude of the Porsche mark makes the club grow too. It's those cars will really perk your interest up, and the people, the owners. It's just a great collection of fun.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I know Nort always says, you know, it's all about the people. I think you see that all over the PCS, you know, stuff that's out there, magazines and any kind of promotional stuff. They always talk about it's the people. And when you look at, I don't know what the size is now. I don't know. It's in the hundreds of people. I don't know, 700 people or 400. I don't know. It's a big number. A lot of people involved. As you can see out here, every Porsche night, a lot of people come out, and there's always events going on. And I think that's pretty cool. You know, Porsche right now is going through a different time in their evolution, and many more people are considering Porsche who would have never considered it 5 or 10 years ago. And it gives an opportunity for guys like you and me who have sort of had Porsche pumping through our veins for years and years and years to sort of show people that, hey, you know, it's not just about buying the car and driving it to work. There's a lot more fun that you can have. You can get involved with the club on a social level, on a driving level. You can learn a little bit more about how your car can truly perform, not on the streets, but you know, go out in a safe environment at a track and really learn the potential of your car, or at least begin to, right?
You're right. It's a complete package. You've got your DE, your driver education classes that they have every so often, and then they have you know, car care, do-it-yourself clinics that they put together, different members who have service garages. And of course the dealerships do a great job. You guys do a great job. And it's, again, you hit the nail on the head. It really is about the people. But these cars are addictive. If you, I suggest you go out and get one. It'll change your life.
It will. You know, you see it time and time again, you know, just the big smile that it puts on. It brings out a lot of emotions in people. So, you know, on such short notice, you know, to come out and sit and do this, really appreciate it. You know, when you think about all that you've done, what is maybe one thing about being involved with Porsche, or maybe we drill down to the racing, that is extra special for you, that has meant something a little bit more than the other things?
I think an increased awareness and yearning for automotive engineering, high quality design, and it just flows back into the way the cars drive and handle. So an engineering side, and then the different places, the travel side of being able to travel to all these great racetracks around the world and to drive on some of the better known ones. And then people that I've met in Europe that, you know, 25, 30, 40 years ago, that I still go visit, and they come and visit.
Isn't that awesome?
And you know, it's just it's endless. It'll never end. There's always something around the next turn.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. Well, I think that's a good way to sort of wind us up here. I know that you weren't able to bring a car out tonight because you're doing some work to a car, right? So maybe next time we'll have you on. You can bring a car and tell us a little bit about what you're doing. But we had your back tonight. That's what I say. You know, when you keep the Porsche faith, there's always someone with your back. So I had your back tonight with the car. I brought the pig out for you, so you didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, it's an amazing. They're amazing cars, and I love the way they've got it painted. So a great marketing tool as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, stick around with me just for a minute. We're going to talk a little bit about this pink pig back here, and then we're going to go to our break. But you can hang in there with me as we talk about this a little bit. And you know, this car that's behind us is, you know, a Porsche Panamera Turbo. This is a V8 twin turbo 550 horsepower car, but you see that it's painted up in this special scheme. It's called the Pink Pig, and back in the early 1970s, Porsche was dominating racing with their 917 Porsche. And they wanted to do some different things with their Porsche, and they were testing out some new aerodynamics for the 917. They were trying to do some things a little bit different, and when they did that, they ended up designing the car in such a way that it became much more broad and much wider and the fenders were fatter. And so the engineering teams sort of nicknamed it the Pig, and it became the Pink Pig. The car ran once at the 24 Hour of Le Mans race in 1971, but then last year at the Le Mans 24 Hour, Porsche decided to bring back the paint scheme and the livery to the RSR, and they actually won the 24 Hour of Le Mans race with that scheme last year. This year at Daytona, you can see the RSR in the Brumos colors and Brumos livery. Porsche did another thing and brought back that livery from back in the 1970s, where they won the 24 Hours of Daytona, and they won this year's race as well. So again and again, you see Porsche sort of bringing forward their history and heritage and sharing it with everybody, and we thought tonight would be a perfect opportunity for us to share with you that story and the Pink Pig of today, this Porsche Panamera Turbo. So with that, we're going to kick it over. We're going to do a little set change here in the background, and as we're doing that, we're going to show you what we did at Porsche South Orlando, the new Porsche dealership in town. Going back a few months ago, we had a special time with the local Porsche Club. The citrus region of the Porsche Club of America came in, and so you'll see a little bit of the sights and sounds of that day, people coming into the dealership and getting their first look at it. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes with our next guest. Enjoy this piece at Porsche South Orlando. All right, so we're back here at Porsche Night, and I got to tell you, things just always come together. You got to keep that Porsche faith, and I was able to talk to Joey Robeson, who is a good friend, and I've actually been wanting to get him on the show here for a long time, and so now you're here. You know, and sometimes the best things happen when there isn't a plan.
Yeah, well,
right?
I had no plan today, and I ended up here, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, so you're here. So Joey has this fantastic car, and I think you're going to enjoy hearing his story about how he got involved with Porsche and how he got involved with this particular car. So we'll go all into that. And then we'll talk about another side to Joey and something that he does that is sort of in the spirit of racing. That's really pretty cool, and we'll talk about that too. So, Joey, again, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. I know when I asked you, what was that, about
An hour ago?
About an hour ago, right? To come on, and I think it's awesome. So I really appreciate it.
2 beers ago.
2 beers ago. That's right, 2 beers ago. Perfect. Okay, so how did Porsche start for you? This is the question we ask everybody. Where did it begin? Where did this Porsche thing get inside of you?
Well, it really comes down to what I do for a living. I'm kind of into the carbon fiber composite business. And I got a phone call one day, which is about, I think it's something like 15 years ago, from a guy that you've had on here before, Ron Zitza.
Okay, yeah.
Zotz Racing. And they were looking to have some hoods and some parts made because he had some 914 molds, and they had found out that I was into that business. So, I mean, that's how we started. They needed a hood. I made them a hood. And then I was making bumpers, and we were making molds, and we were making all kinds of parts for the 914s.
Wow, well, that's funny. I moved with my wife and girls to Orlando in 2004. And in that year, I bought a 911 for my wife. We bought an 89 Targa that we have out here all the time. I didn't bring it tonight. I brought the pig tonight from the dealership.
There you go.
But we bought that car in 04, and we needed someone to help us with, some of the maintenance that I just, wasn't prepared to do or couldn't do at home.
Right.
I do a lot of my own stuff, but there was a lot of things that I couldn't do. And I met the guys out at Zotz out in Castleberry, and I met Donnie
Right.
at that time.
Donnie's here tonight.
And
haven't
yeah,
seen
I
him
know
in a
you
long
were
time.
just talking to him, right?
Yeah.
But I saw some engines there that had shrouds that were made out of carbon fiber.
Yeah. They were made
And
by
so
me.
you made those. So isn't that pretty
was
cool?
The thing. It was one of those things where they showed me this picture of this Porsche motor with the carbon shrouds, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool! Let's do that." Let's do that.
Yeah.
And I've been building them ever since. I mean, I don't build them as much for Ron anymore. I do a lot of stuff for JB Racing. They're in the motor business and actually build racing motor, Porsche motors. So we have it's kind of expanded. And Ron, I mean, their business has taken off, and they're doing a lot of coaching and stuff like that. So now it's kind of specialty stuff.
Yeah.
If somebody needs something and they want it to look really cool, we try to provide that for them.
So the Porsche thing just started as a result of this connection with Ron Zitza, asking about parts. You didn't have really anything about Porsche cars on your mind ever?
It had nothing to do with that. It really, after I made a few parts, they needed some help, track support. They needed grunts, basically. So I was a grunt, and I would go to the track and end up at Daytona, or Road Atlanta, or any track that they race at, historic cars. And was a grunt, would run around like a crazy person doing whatever they said to do. We would try to do it. And, you had drivers, you had cars. They're kind of an arrive and drive kind of thing. Yeah. So they would prep the cars, the guys would show up, we'd have a great weekend, and by the end of the weekend, you'd be just totally spent.
So that sounded like a good deal.
It was a good deal.
Right.
And seeing through all that, again, Ron had some of these molds and stuff, and I was like, this would be really cool. I should buy one of these 914s. They were relatively cheap at the time. They're actually going crazy now, but found one, bought it.
And away you went. You just started. The good deal, bad deal. So I was just at a memorial service for a very dear friend of mine who passed away recently. But I got him involved in Porsche and in 914s. So it's kind of it's a cool story. You know, we're at the memorial service over the weekend, and his sisters talked about conversations they would have with Andy about, you know, things that they would ask him for advice on, and it would always be good deal, bad deal. He'd always say that's a good deal or no, that's a bad deal. And so it's kind of cool that you know, this is all sort of coming up tonight. We're talking about 914s. He loved 914s. I got him involved in that, and now we're talking about your 914. So I think there was something in the air, right?
There was something.
There's something in the air.
Well,
So
I'm really sorry about the loss of your friend. That you know, watching that whole history. When I met you probably a year or so ago, when the car wasn't really done, or, you know, I was just out testing, seeing what it was like to be out, you know, and to learn all the history that you even had with Porsche and racing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And again, this was a college buddy, right?
Yeah,
this was
yeah.
This is a guy that you knew.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you knew inside, outside. I mean,
Absolutely.
everything. So it's
Absolutely.
really kind of it's a shame.
yeah, it is. But you know, you got to live, and
Live the day.
and he did that. You know, that was something that I spoke about on Saturday about him. It's like he got his diagnosis of this dreadful disease, CNS lymphoma, and he beat it, but then it came back and it got him.
Right.
But it was about a 2-year ordeal, and you know, he never changed. He never stopped being him.
Good.
Over those 2 years, he probably called me about 10 cars he wanted to buy, and I think he bought about 5 of them. Yeah, he just never stopped.
That's really
And he
cool.
never complained about anything. So that's kind of the racing spirit, I think.
Right.
You know, you
Well,
just
it's the
just
Porsche
get out there
spirit,
and
the
you,
car spirit.
yeah, you just go for it, right?
Right.
All right, so tell us about this car. How did you find the basis of this car was what? What year is this?
Basically, it's a non-numbers matching 2-liter 1975 Porsche 914.
My 914 is a 1975.
1975. I know, isn't that ridiculous? It is really still. Oh, it's really old technology. There's really nothing real new. Not like today where you push a button, you do anything like that. You still have to shift it. You still have to watch everything.
Yeah.
But when I bought the car, I bought it from this older gentleman in Winter Park, and you know, when I got there to get the car, he opened the door and he had like 4 flathead Fords motors that were sitting on the floor of his garage, and I just
That's
went,
crazy.
wow, this is really cool. And he told me all about the car, let me drive it. I was just hooked. I had to buy it.
And that was it.
And that was it.
And so then it was a horsepower thing. So much like my buddy Andy, he got in my 914 and he loved the handling and look and everything, but he said, Brian, there's no power in this car.
Right.
It's got no power.
But they go. They're good. Even with the 4-cylinders, it's a good handling car. You have to learn how to use the car to your advantage. So
It's like a momentum car, right?
It's a
With the
momentum
4-cylinder.
car with
But
foot down.
you had different plans too. You sort of saw that it was underpowered and you wanted to do something different and actually put a higher horsepower Porsche motor in it.
Right.
And go off to the races. But then to talk about your business of what you do working with carbon fiber, you know, it's kind of hard probably to see on camera right now as we look at this car, but when you look at it up close, there are all of these parts. You can sort of see it on the fender. I don't know if you can see it in the back, that are made out of carbon fiber. There's tons of carbon fiber on this car, all custom made, all done. And this comes from your business, which is repairing carbon fiber bicycles. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but tell me a little bit about your business, Frame Doctor, and how all that started and what you do there.
Well, again, I've been in the composite business for, it is now going on 33 years. It's a year less than I've been married. So, so that's how I keep track of it. I worked for a gentleman years and years ago, and we made a lot of really cool things out of carbon. And to me, it was a job. It was sticky, it was messy, it was itchy, it was a mess. At the time, I was racing go-karts, and I made a piece for my go-kart, then I made another part for my go-kart, then I made this and that, and then all of a sudden I'm going, this is the coolest, this is some cool stuff. And then from there, everybody else, you know, there's a lot of people that want a certain widget or a certain something, and that's what we do. And then the bicycles, my wife is an avid triathlete, and she's a runner. She's done a couple of Ironmans and stuff like that. And the bicycle thing, you just can't. Some good stuff.
Someone's having fun over there. Yay! It's Porsche night, man. It's Porsche night, brother. Let's do it.
Get it on the limiter. So the bicycle thing, I had a friend ask me if I could fix a bike, and that was like 10 years ago. And I was like, sure, I could fix your bike. I fixed the bike, and that's how Frame Doctor became what it is. And that's really the basis of what I do. I fix carbon fiber bicycle frames.
Yeah.
I paint. I fix.
Yeah, I remember the first time I visited you at your shop. It just sort of blew me away. All the stuff that I saw, and and you can see it just in what you were just telling me about how you got started and you built a part. You can see that you're passionate about this. You love doing this.
I do.
You love the challenge. You love creating new things, and it's just a blast, right? They say you do what you love. You never work a day in your life. And that's the deal.
I remember people used to say this is really the greatest thing. You get to work on your passion. And my passion at the time was cycling. I don't cycle very much now. That's kind of like, that's by the wayside. I have so much work and I'm always busy. So this is kind of taken the space to finish the car. Because the car, a lot of people know me. The car has been through a lot. It's in a trailer. It's over here in the back lot. It's covered up with dust and dirt. It has gone through a lot in the last couple of years. So it's been cool that I got to finish it.
Yeah,
finish, I don't know if that's a good word.
You're never finished with a car like this, and especially not you, because you always want to improve upon the piece. It's like tonight when I saw you and you said, "Hey, I got new headlights and I want to do some different bezels or whatever." I'm like, "It looks fine the way it is."
Right.
No, you're already thinking about what the next part's going to be, right?
I gotta make something for that, without a doubt.
You gotta make something for it.
If they work tonight, it'll be cool. I get to go home in the dark, so I haven't been out in the dark in a while. So
Well, I heard a connection with your car and something that Tommy Johnson, our guest that we had on tonight.
Okay.
He's quite an accomplished racer.
Right.
He's raced all over the U.S. He's raced in Europe. He's raced at the 24-Hour Classic. He's been at Nürburgring, and he told us about this 3-liter 911 that he raced over there. And you have a 3-liter 911 engine in this 914, right?
I do.
So that must have been quite an undertaking.
The engine was really cool. I bought it off of eBay. I bought it in a box, in boxes, completely apart. It's really interesting. The guy had bought a 911 from a Porsche shop that was going out of business, and the motor was in boxes. They were at the time redoing the motor for this 911. It was a 78 911 SC, and he didn't want the motor anymore, and he had a Corvair engine, which is an Post 6, same style motor. And he was going to put the Corvair engine in the 911, and he sold me.
Hey, I think good deal, another good deal. I think you did all right.
It worked really good.
Yeah. And
again, we had JB Racing did all the machining to the crank and with the pistons and all. I still have stock rods. I had Haro Zitza, who helped me put the bottom end together, which is just an amazing. I have pictures of when he was still alive and helped me put the motor together, and that was really cool. We got the bottom end, and he was such an amazing man when it comes to Porsches. And I had new parts and old parts, and what was really interesting is he would see some of my new parts and go, I have some parts, and he would he would go, these will work just fine, they're better, and it was great. I had such a good time doing that.
Yeah, he did it. The engine for my 914 conversion, and it was the same kind of thing. I met him, and meeting with him in his little shop that he had there.
Yep.
It was really it was really something special to see him work and to hear him talk. It was truly his life's passion, and a pretty cool.
He just did.
Yeah.
It was not a thinking process. He was so good with the motors, and he knew all the torque settings. He knew everything, and I just stood there and did whatever. If I had to hand him something, I handed him something. And it was a hot summer day, and we were both sweating, and it was a truly inspiring day.
Yeah, well, what a great story. That's a great Porsche story in and of itself, right there, right? So when we had Ron Zitz on, and we sort of walked through, memory lane and history of Zotz racing and how it all came to be, and we talked a lot about Harrow and all the thing that he accomplished in his racing career.
Right.
And then Ron
Especially
just
when
sort
you
of
go like Daytona, and there's like wooden stands, and there's like nobody. And you
yeah.
look at that and you go, "Oh my God!"
Yeah, exactly. And then Ron sort of followed in his footsteps, and
Now
then
you got Eric doing
now
it.
you got Eric. So it's been a long family there. So that's cool that you know those guys.
Yep.
Wow. All right.
The top end of the motor was done by Mike Bruns, and that was he was at JB Racing. And again, they did the top end of the motor, got that all together, and got everything together, dynoed it, and it was like, there it sat on the stand for, I don't know, at least a year or so, just me looking at it going, I can't wait to put it in the car.
Yeah. What do I do next? Well, I'll tell you what. For not having any association with Porsche other than building some carbon fiber parts, what you've done, what you've put together with this conversion, this is a super special car. There's not another one like this anywhere on the planet. There's been some cool 914-6 conversions where people take the 4-cylinder motors out and put, higher horsepower motors in. There's all kinds of cool stuff out there, but I got to say, I have never seen one even remotely like this that has the storyline before it. So congratulations to you on, just an awesome car. It continues to evolve. Every time I see it, it's got something else a little different with it. So it's just fun, and I'm so glad that you finally got to come on.
Well, I'm glad we got to hook up. I mean, again, a year ago, I'm glad we got to hook up, and this whole thing with Ace Cafe and what they do and what they bring to everybody here in Orlando with all the different cars and special nights and the special bike nights and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just fantastic.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
It really is. And the venue is just in the perfect place. You can get here from just about anywhere in Central Florida pretty easily.
And Cycle Fever TV.
And Cycle Fever TV, or CFTV as we call it now. A lot of people were confused, like it's Porsche night, but it's on Cycle Fever TV.
I know. It's a weird thing.
So we call it CFTV now, and it's like everybody knows, right?
It's good that you do it. I mean, it's really great that you come out here and take the time to interview everybody and share their passion. It's a really good thing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and we just have fun doing it, so that's why we keep doing it. Sure. And Hank and Shawn and John and all the guys that that help us with the broadcast is just it's a labor of love. None of us are getting rich doing this at all, but we have fun, and that's what it's all about, right?
That's what it's all about.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty much going to wrap us up tonight on Porsche Night from Cycle Fever, Porsche Night from Ace Cafe on CFTV. See, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's all good. It's just about having a great time out here. So until we get together next month on the third Monday, that'll be it. I encourage everybody to come out and check us out. Come out to Ace Cafe through the month. There's always something going on, as Joey had mentioned. And just come out here and check it out and have a blast. So again, till next month, we'll see you at Porsche Night in the month of May. Unbelievable that we're sitting here in May already. Everyone's got the stress of taxes. It's over today. We got it. We made it, and we move on. All right, guys. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.